Welcome to our slash pro revenge, where we share stories of people getting back at someone with pro revenge after being wronged. Renege once the job's done, prepare for your just desserts. A few years after I started my business, I was asked to clean up and optimize a number of PCs in multiple locations, as well as set up some phones and templates for a new client who owned a local restaurant. The work, all labor apart from a little travel, was performed over the space of a month due to scheduling conflicts and school holidays, but on completing the last of it, the client confirmed verbally that he was happy with all I'd done and to go ahead and send an invoice. I duly emailed an invoice for a sum just in excess of £400. I waited for payment, never heard anything, sent reminder emails, called, and left messages, but no response. Eventually, a couple of busy months had passed, and I met the client by chance in the local supermarket. On asking why he'd not paid or been in touch, he said that all the PCs were as bad as they had been before I'd started, and that he had tried to contact me with no success. As my landline and mobile phone had caller display as well as answering services, and there had been no emails, I knew the latter was BS, and as any PC user knows, a system can easily go back to pot if the user bad habits don't change. So I contacted a local debt collector, gave him the details, printouts of my call logs and post-invoicing emails, and he took them to the restaurateur. On his return, his words were he is not disputing the invoice, he is saying that the work wasn't done right, so it's his word against yours. I queried if it was worth taking the guy to small claims, to which the debt collector said even if you could prove he confirmed he was satisfied with the work, they might insist you get his computers back to their pre-invoice state again. Do you really want to spend more time doing that? Of course, the answer was no, so I stewed it over in my mind and came up with a plan. At this point, it was late November, so, creating to throwaway email accounts in female names, I got in touch with the restaurant to book a large party for Valentine's night the following February. I put it down as my husband's surprise 40th birthday party, confirmed that my husband's sister, and CC'd her in the message with the other throwaway, couldn't make the journey north, but would happily pay the £10 head deposit as her share towards the night. Of course, as time went on, the ideas grew arms and legs. The numbers attending increased until the owner suggested he'd reserve the whole restaurant for the evening, and they would happily arrange the seating to suit us. But could I ensure the deposit was sorted as a please? Of course, I confirmed that the sister was a scatterbrain and that I'd ensure the check was with him very soon. He emailed the sister using the CC address and she confirmed it had been posted. To keep him on side, I asked for a proposed menu in advance so that I could send it to all the attendees for pre-ordering. Naturally, they were delighted that they would know this, as it makes their life much easier. Consequently, the numbers for all 3 courses were emailed in with a few fussy eater variables thrown in for good measure. Needless to say, by the beginning of February, he was getting quite antsy about there being no sign of the deposit. But I reassured him that the sister's check must have been lost in the post, so she would send another by special delivery, if they could ensure someone was there to sign for it. I knew the owner lived about 25 miles away, and the restaurant didn't open till 5 p.m., so he'd have to come in very early and hang around waiting for it. A week before D-Day, and he'd obviously had enough. He emailed in a spat saying they would turn away numerous enquiries, had no deposit, and could no longer hold back on taking other bookings. This time I didn't bother replying, my part was done. My wife, at the time, and I were booked in at another restaurant close by for our own Valentine's meal, After which we took a walk past the restaurateur's business premises to see just two cars in their parking lot, one of which was his. I'm not sure how much he must have lost out on that night, but knowing his prices, I'd bet it was significantly more than the pound 400 plus I'd invoiced him. Of course, lessons were learned by me to get written or emailed confirmation of job satisfaction for one, and not letting new clients go unbilled for too long was another. Naturally, I had no hesitation letting all and sundry know how he'd behaved either, so he was blacklisted or forced to pay upfront for any work by IT and other professionals I knew locally. Refused to pay $60 to fix my roof. Okay, I'll close your building site down and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Names, places and timeframes have been changed as per rules. Characters in this story: my friend, who I will call Brian; bullying demolition man we will call Keith; greedy property developer we will call Karen; and the insurance assessor. This tale of this nuclear revenge happened a while back and is a work in progress. It is too good not to tell, and I will try and keep you updated down the track. Brian's neighbor is a typical greedy career landlord that left their rental house in disrepair. The poor tenant was living in the cold house, raw sewage leaking onto the lawn and holes in the house that you could see light coming out of the house. After multiple requests from Brian, Karen refused to get any repairs done. When the state government introduced new laws about ensuring landlords are insulating their rental properties, instead doing this to the house, Karen kicked their tenant out and left the house vacant for 5 years. The old house deteriorated so much more during this time, with rats infesting the house and invading other houses nearby. Brian and his wife, with their limited funds, were able to get sufficient lending from the bank and offered to buy the house and do it up themselves to improve the neighborhood or rent it out, as there is a massive shortage of rental properties in our local county. Greedy Karen did not want to sell, nor did she want to spend a cent on the house to remedy the rodent problem. She also did not care about the effect the house was having on aesthetics of the street. It is important to know that Karen and her wealthy family have over 100 rental properties, and due to lax tax laws in this region, they do not pay a cent and can get tax write-offs when their properties deteriorate, then can claim on this as a loss. Long story short, some of them appear to be leeches on our society and are one of the reasons property prices are so high and rent prices are skyrocketing in our area. Her husband is also the chairman of the state's Landlords Association, an association that he often fronts the media for, defending landlords and putting a good media spin on them when there is negative press. Fast forward 5 years and Brian finds out the house is going to be demolished to make way for some new houses to go in on the small section. That's good news at least, though Brian and his wife were anxious about how smoothly the demolition would go due to the fact the houses are quite close to each other. This is important for later. Prior to demolition, the company doing it had to get samples from all sides of the house to check for asbestos. Either Karen made it difficult for the company to get down the side bordering Brian's house, or they simply were too lazy, but only samples from 3 sides, not 4, were taken. Demolition day came around and Brian was concerned that no safety barriers had been put up to protect his house from falling bricks off the chimney, nor was there anything from stopping dust and debris going all over his new deck and porch area. Later that day, Brian had the pleasure of meeting Keith. Keith is the demolition company manager that is well known around the district for only caring about money and has little regard for people or property. Keith was doing the demolition himself today simply with a digger. Brian returned home during his break at work to check the progress of the demolition and found the demolition was already complete after only an hour or so. The demolished house was in a pile. He climbed up on his roof and to his disbelief found hundreds of bricks had fallen onto his roof causing damage, though he was lucky none had fallen through into the house. Brian phoned up demolition man Keith to ask about what went wrong. Keith initially played down the damage, despite there being 200 bricks laying on Brian's roof. Even with the damage done, no apology, and the rude attitude of Keith, Brian kept his cool. Since I did a little bit of roofing when I was younger, I can fix up the roof if you just get me 4 new sheets of roofing iron, and we will call it even. Don't worry about paying for paint. I can sort that out when I paint the whole roof after the fall. Brian's roof was not in the best of shape, but it was in much worse shape after having bricks dumped on it, leaving massive dents and chipping the paint. This is the moment that a simple decision on Keith's part would screw him and the landlord big time. Not happening, pal. Your roof is fucked anyway. I'll get you a sheet of second-hand roofing iron from my yard to repair the damage on roof, and I can come and hose off the dust of your deck and dog kennel. The revenge was not intentionally nuclear, but Brian had a dilemma that his roof was damaged and he needed it repaired. There was rain and snow forecast later in the week, and he shouldn't be out of pocket having to buy new materials to fix his own roof up to a good standard. Brian is normally calm and relaxed man, but this situation and the way he and his property were treated sparked an angle that I have never seen before. Brian got in contact with his insurance company, and due to the issue involving a roof, a building assessor arrived that day to assess the claim. The assessor would then be able to seek damages from the landlord or demolition company if he found them to be at fault. Brian also reported the demolition company to the local health and safety authorities due to their lack of safety precautions used when doing the demolition. The assessor got onto the roof with Brian and was mortified to hear how Keith had acted in such disregard with the damage done to the roof, and his lack of an apology for any wrongdoing got the assessor mad. He then looked more concerned and bent down and picked up some grey fibrous material. Luckily, thanks to COVID, we already have masks on Brian. This here looks like it is asbestos. I don't know how they got the sign off to get this house knocked down in this manner. You don't know at the time of being exposed to this stuff, but if you breathe in these fibers, it can cause serious diseases later on in life, including lung cancer. I'll get this sent off to the lab for testing and will be in touch. Fast forward another day, and Brian was contacted by his insurance company. It turns out the side of the house that wasn't tested was clad in asbestos. Not just any bad asbestos, the worst possible type you can get. Insurance will be seeking damages to replace Brian's whole roof, not just the damaged part. The cost of replacement is likely to be around $20,000 USD. This is the cheap part. The demolition site has been shut down by local authorities, and there needs to be a massive decontamination of the area. This involves having to remove at least half a meter of topsoil on surrounding properties, test the soil, and remove more if there is asbestos still found. Areas with decks need to potentially have these removed so soil can be evacuated out underneath. The cost for this cleanup will likely be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but who will pay for this is unknown at this stage. Whether it is Keith or Karen's insurance or them personally, time will tell. Didn't pay for fireplace. Ended up with a house full of smoke. A friend of mine used to install wood stoves and sell firewood. He still sells firewood, but stopped bothering with fireplaces. This one guy bought a fireplace and wanted it installed. My friend did this, but told him he would need a higher chimney for better air drawing. The guy refused it. I'm assuming maybe he didn't want a higher chimney for the look, and my friend kept insisting. The owner said no, and when the fireplace was done, he complained it was hard to get a fire going due to the chimney being too short, leading to poor drawing of air. My friend came with a chimney extension and it worked fine, but he decided he didn't want to pay still, even though the job was done, and done well. So a few weeks later, my friend was passing through the area and saw nobody was home. But there was a fire going to keep the house warm. Owner must have been at work. So my friend climbed up onto the roof and got his chimney extension back. It was a plus, but not enough to cover everything that was installed and the time put in. Where things get funny is that once he took the extension of the chimney, due to poor drawing of air, the house started to fill up with smoke as the fire burned. The owner must have come home to a thick smoke-filled home. Try getting that smell out of stuff. Lol. Probably a layer of soot on everything. To my recollection, the owner did not have any pets, so no lives were harmed. But when everything you own is black and reeks like smoke and your home is freezing in the middle of winter, I bet you would have rather have paid someone for their products and services. I hate people like that. When they know from the point they hire you, no matter how good of a job you do, they will try to find some reason not to pay you. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.